coming to you live from the Tino Studios in Minooka, Illinois. I'm your host, Bucky Shanks, and this is Tino Tonight. Welcome everybody to the 2020 season preview edition of Tino Tonight. Before we get started, I just want to say we got so much negative going on in the world, this video comes at a perfect time for a distraction. Hopefully for a few minutes we can forget that COVID is a thing and the world is a mess, so enough about that. Bucky is here and ready for the upcoming football season. I'm going around the country, campus to campus, checking in with each team here in TinoNCAA, and I'm taking a look at how 2019 played out for each and every one of them. I'm looking at the current state of their rosters, and I'm giving my predictions for the upcoming season, as well as Commissioner Tuss Allen Emmer. We're going to kick things off right now with the ACC. We start with North Carolina. For the Tar Heels, it was a long season from the jump. The downward spiral started for this team long before the season opener. On June 1st, 2019 at 10:19 a.m., head coach Brian Swint decided he was going to start the franchise with a proven young quarterback named Andrew Luck. Unfortunately, 2.5 months later, the quarterback would announce his retirement from pro football and ultimately leave the Tar Heels high and dry. The fun didn't stop there as they went on to take Antonio Brown in round 5, who we all know how that ended, Darius Geis in round 7, who at the time just had knee problems, but now he might not have a future in football altogether. And then Corey Davis in round 9, whose only real problem since being drafted 5th by the Titans is he's just not very good at football. Add all that up and you get an 0-11 season and a fired head coach in Brian Swint. But 2020 is here and we enter the Brian Reap era. Reap was one of the hot names circling the rumor mill when jobs opened up around the country. He had his pick of the litter but ultimately decided on North Carolina. Reap led a high-powered offense on the West Coast as offensive coordinator of the LA Chargers. Coach Reap didn't waste any time putting his plan in place as he came in and took one look around and realized the culture needed to change and change now. From July 28th to August 7th, 9 trades were made and the off-season draft was conducted. 20 rookie picks were made, with 6 of them being in the first round. 6 sub picks were made as well as 3 Debbie picks. Bucky personal favorite quarterback Justin Fields was taken at pick 1501. Anyone in my circle knows how high I am on this kid. A quick rundown of some of the additions made: quarterback Joe Burrow, wide receiver Stephon Diggs, wide receiver Jalen Reagor, wide receiver Justin Jefferson, wide receiver Henry Ruggs, wide receiver T. Higgins, linebacker Isaiah Simmons, linebacker Patrick Queen, figure it out, Bucky, tight end Tyler Higbee, quarterback Phillip Rivers, and running back Raheem Mostert. But with addition comes subtraction. On the way out, defensive end Nick Bosa, quarterback Daniel Jones, linebacker Bradley Chubb, defensive tackle Chris Jones, defensive tackle Jonathan Allen, wide receiver Mike Williams, quarterback Justin Herbert, who didn't stay very long at all, wide receiver Deebo Samuel, wide receiver Brandon Ayuk, who stayed about as long as Justin Herbert, cornerback Adoree Jackson, and quarterback Andrew Luck. Looking ahead to the roster, quarterback first overall rookie pick Joe Burrow joins Josh Allen and Phillip Rivers. For running back, weak group here likely to be led by Melvin Gordon and Raheem Mostert. Wide receiver, 3 veterans transferred in: Stephon Diggs, Dede Westbrook, and Tyrell Williams. Also added rookie wide receivers Jalen Reagor, Justin Jefferson, Henry Ruggs, and T. Higgins. This group will go as far as the rookies will take them. Tight end, newly acquired Tyler Higbee looks to lead this group. And on the defense, there are a couple pieces like Khalil Mack, Von Miller, Anthony Barr, first-team All-Tino, Tre'Davious White, and Kevin Byard. But ultimately, the defense needs to be overhauled. Overall, it's likely going to be another long season for this group, but the future is bright and the arrow is pointing straight up. Exciting times going forward in Chapel Hill. We stay in state and head over to Winston-Salem. For Coach Kevin Gilliman's Demon Deacons, they started out 1-0 before losing by a half point week 2 to Iowa State. They would then lose 6 in a row before heating up at the end of the year, beating a pair of top 25 teams and finishing the year on a 3-game winning streak. Overall, they finished up 4-7 and going 2-3 versus the top 25. The momentum from the end of the year carried over into the offseason. They made 4 trades, mixing and matching draft picks along the way. When the dust settled, they added defensive end Nick Bosa, quarterback Carson Wentz, linebacker Shaq Barrett, running back J.K. Dobbins, running back Cam Akers, wide receiver Deebo Samuel, linebacker Willie Gay, linebacker Jordan Brooks, while also sitting on wide receivers Jamar Chase, Rondale Moore, and Clemson's Justin Ross, assuming his health checks out. The only losses for this team, a pair of running backs in Saquon Barkley and Kenyon Drake. They did lose Luke Kuechly to retirement, and they also lost Gerald McCoy to a season-ending injury. Offensively, this team is loaded at quarterback with Drew Brees, Carson Wentz, second-team All-Tino Dak Prescott, and Drew Lock. Running back, this team is going to need early contributions from J.K. Dobbins and Cam Akers. Devin Singletary and Kerryon Johnson will help, but both the Lions and Bills drafted running backs this year. Scratching my head, wondering why this team traded Saquon and Kenyon Drake for Carson Wentz and picks at this point when they need those two more than they need Carson Wentz. Wide receiver, they have first-team All-Tino Julio Jones, Deebo Samuel, and Emmanuel Sanders as for sure weekly starters. Brandon Cooks and Deshaun Jackson figure to be worked in as well. After that, it looks to fall off. At tight end, there's options here. Austin Hooper, TJ Hawkinson, O.J. Howard, Dawson Knox. Defensive tackle looks to be a weak spot now with Gerald McCoy being lost for the season. The rest of the defense looks ready to compete. Defensive end will be a strength for this team, led by brand new transfer and defensive freshman of the year Nick Bosa. Trey Flowers will be the DE2. Justin Houston and Bruce Irvin are still contributing. Jordan Phillips scored 444 points. Linebacker is loaded on this team. You would think losing Luke Kuechly would be a huge blow, and it is, but this team is going to absorb that blow and move forward just fine. Freshly acquired first-team All-Tino linebacker Shaq Barrett will lead the charge, followed by Jalen Smith, Eric Kendricks, and Harold Landry. Jordan Brooks and Willie Gay figure to be early contributors as well. We got an A-plus group right here. Cornerback is led by Marcus Peters and second-team All-Tino Marlon Humphrey. Safety is a bit of a question mark. Antoine Bethea led this group but is still unsigned. Rashad Jones, when available, he's elite, but that hasn't been the case. Chuck Clark is unknown in fantasy circles, but Bucky is a fan of him. Carl Joseph looks likely to start. This group is probably going to nag the defense. Overall, look for the Demon Deacons to compete week in and week out this year, but I feel like this team might need another offseason to bring in more talent and gain a few more starters. With Chase, Rondale, and Ross all possibly arriving on campus next year, that would be a huge boost to Coach Gilman's shot at making a run at the ACC title. And we make our way over to South Bend to visit the Fighting Irish and head coach Justin Parks' group. 2019 was a forgettable year for this group. They started the year off with a loss to everyone's favorite article maker, Vanderbilt. Stop it, Bucky. And then a loss to eventual national title runner-up, Oregon. Nothing to hang your head about as those two combined to go 22-6. Yikes. The Irish would open up ACC play with a win over Georgia Tech and Wake Forest, and then would drop 5 straight before beating winless North Carolina. They did get victory number 3 in the season finale versus Syracuse. When the dust settled, Notre Dame ended up 3-8 overall with a 3-6 record in the ACC. The tougher teams posed to be too much as they went 0-5 versus the top 25 and 0-2 versus the top 10. They were ranked as high as 24th back in week 2, but ultimately would miss out on the postseason. This team didn't make any trades, and I personally don't mind that. Building through the draft is an approach I personally respect. The Irish welcome in running backs DeAndre Swift, defensive tackle Derek Brown, quarterback Jordan Love, defensive end Ifedi Odenigbo, don't even know if I pronounced that right, running back Joshua Kelly, defensive end AJ Epinesa, and linebacker AJ Johnson. They've also received a verbal commitment from quarterback Trey Lance while only losing Damian Williams, who opted out due to COVID. Looking ahead to 2020, starting with the offense, second-team All-Tino Matt Ryan will lead the quarterback group, and then we will see what Cam Newton or Jarrett Stidham bring for the quarterback 2 slot. Running back will have the three-headed monster of Derrick Henry, Alvin Kamara, and Mark Ingram. DeAndre Swift likely slots in as the number 4. Joshua Kelly, Chris Thompson, Boston Scott, and DeAndre Washington figure to chip in as well. Top 4 wide receivers from last year, first-team All-Tino DeAndre Hopkins, second-team All-Tino Julian Edelman, A.J. Brown, and Jamison Crowder figure to remain in the same roles. Darius Slayton, James Washington, and Danny Amendola will round out the wide receiver group. Jury is still out on N'Keal Harry. Second-team All-Tino Zach Ertz and Hayden Hurst will both likely be starting every week for this team. The defense will be led by the linebacker group, led by Demario Davis, K.J. Wright, and Devin Bush. This is the strength of the defense. The cornerback group needs a major overhaul. After Joe Hayden, you can draw straws for who else you're going to start on this team. Ultimately, I think this team is going to surprise some people in the conference. Keep an eye out for the Irish this season. On to New York, where we pay a visit to Josh Hamilton's Syracuse Orange. This team came out of the gates on fire, crushing Rutgers, Kansas State, and Florida State, and jumping all the way to number 1 in the country as of week 4. Unfortunately, they would lose 5 of their next 7 games before beating Notre Dame in the season finale. The second half of the season was deflating, and it showed as they ended up in the Cotton Bowl, but they never really showed up as they got boat raced by Arizona State by just under 400 points. Syracuse didn't even score 700 points. Yikes. The Orange ended the 2019 campaign 6-6 and 4-5 in the ACC, 2-3 versus the top 25 and 2-0 versus the top 10. As previously mentioned, they made it all the way to the top spot in week 4. Help is on the way as they welcome CeeDee Lamb, Tua Tagovailoa, Kenneth Murray, Antoine Winfield Jr., and Dre Greenlaw, as well as receiving a verbal commitment from running back Najee Harris. Add that up with the fact that they lost nothing, and this team's arrow is trending in the right direction. Looking at the roster, team is set up beautifully at quarterback with Deshaun Watson and Offensive Freshman of the Year Kyler Murray to lead the way while Tua gets his feet under him. Over at running back, they're going to need everyone to chip in as they don't really have anything that catches your eye. The wide receivers, they're going to need Juju and Calvin Ridley to take another step forward, Will Fuller to stay healthy, good luck, and CeeDee Lamb to contribute from day one. Tight end, they'll need Evan Ingram to stay healthy and Irv Smith to keep progressing. Defensive end is led by recently paid superstar, first-team All-Tino winner Joey Bosa, followed up by 3 500-point guys in Eric Armstead, Dante Fowler, and Sam Hubbard. Linebackers, second-team All-Tino Joe Schobert, Levante David, and Blake Martinez welcome figure it out, Bucky, Jesus. Dre Greenlaw to the linebacker room. Cornerback Jair Alexander, James Bradbury, and Kenny Moore lead the way for the corners. Safety will be led by 555-point scorer Jesse Bates. I think this team has potential to do some damage on any given week, but I do think the running back and wide receiver group lacking star power is going to cause some inconsistency at times throughout the season, leading to some losses. The quarterbacks and defense will need to carry the load for the Orange in 2020 if they are going to threaten for the ACC title. Down to sunny Florida as we check in with head coach Teron Kane and the Hurricanes. Miami started off ice cold, losing its first 4 games before winning 4 of the next 5. They ultimately dropped their final 2 games of the season, and that unfortunately knocked them out of bowl season. The Hurricanes would finish up 4-7 overall and 4-5 in the ACC. They only went 1-5 versus the top 25, 1-1 versus the top 10, and 0-1 versus the top 5. Heading into the 2020 season, Miami welcomes quarterback Gardner Minshew and quarterback Justin Herbert, running back Keyshawn Vaughn, linebacker Logan Wilson, wide receiver Alan Lazard, and cornerback Richard Sherman. They also received a verbal commitment from wide receiver Rashad Bateman. The only significant losses were Stephon Diggs, CJ Mosley to an opt-out, and Michael Bennett retired. Looking ahead to 2020, quarterback group is led by Peyton Manning Trophy winner and first-team All-Tino Lamar Jackson. Running back group will be led by second-team All-Tino Ezekiel Elliott and Miles Sanders, but ultimately the Canes need to stay healthy in this area as there is not a lot of depth here. Wide receiver is definitely the strength of the Hurricane offense as they run out Amari Cooper, Tyler Lockett, Tyreek Hill, Odell Beckham, and DJ Chark. Tight end is a group of 3 solid youngsters in Noah Fant, Mike Gesicki, and Dallas Goedert. On the defense, defensive tackle returns of a pair of 400-point scorers in Lawrence Guy and Sheldon Richardson. Defensive end is led by the return of Myles Garrett and Josh Allen, but they did lose Michael Bennett to retirement as previously mentioned. Linebacker is led by a trio of 500-point scorers in Matt Judon, Shaq Thompson, and Devin White. And the corners welcome in Richard Sherman as he scored 437 last year. The safeties welcome newcomers Grant Delpit and Kyle Duggar. The heart and soul of this group, Ed Reed Trophy winner and first-team All-Tino Eric Reed, remains unsigned at the time of this publishing. This team has bowl potential if things break right. I think another draft or 2 is needed to threaten for the ACC title or a playoff berth, though. We head to South Carolina to take a look at head coach Dave Labby's Clemson Tigers. For Clemson, they got out of the gates quick, starting 3-0 and getting up to number 2 in the country. They would sputter through ACC play, however, going 4-5. They did have a couple of tough conference losses, scoring 1,064 and 1,166 and losing. Those 2 games get flipped, and this team is in the ACC title mix. It was a running joke on Tino tonight that this Clemson team just could not beat ranked teams, but they ultimately finished up 2-4 versus the top 25. They ended the 2019 season with a 7-5 record and 4-5 in the ACC. After losing 3 of their last 4 and missing the playoffs as a result, the Tigers took their ACC frustration into the Fiesta Bowl and beat up LSU by almost 300. Not where the Tigers wanted to end up after how they started, but a Fiesta Bowl championship looks good on any resume. For not having a first, second, or fourth round pick in this year's rookie draft, the Tigers I thought did well walking out with Chase Claypool and KJ Hamler in the 3rd and 5th round respectively. They also added Brandon Ayuk via trade as well as safety Jordan Poyer and cornerback Adoree Jackson while not losing much of anything. Looking ahead to the roster, quarterback remains a strength as he has the 2 best quarterbacks in the league in my opinion with Russell Wilson and Patrick Mahomes. People will argue Lamar Jackson is the best quarterback in the league after winning MVP, but you can give me these 2 over Lamar any day. Running back, Heisman Trophy winner, Walter Payton Trophy winner, and first-team All-Tino Christian McCaffrey leads the group and usually puts up enough points for the RB2, but that will likely be Chris Carson. Wide receiver is solid with Allen Robinson, second-team All-Tino DJ Moore, Robert Woods, Tyler Boyd, Adam Thielen, and the previous mentioned 3 rookies. Tight end is led by Tony Gonzalez Trophy winner and first-team All-Tino winner Travis Kelce. Kenny Clark leads the defensive tackles, but just role players behind him. Carlos Dunlap was a 600-point guy last season, and Jadeveon Clowney transferred in from North Carolina. This team is crazy deep at linebacker as they have 18 on the roster. Ray Lewis Trophy winner and second-team All-Tino winner Jordan Hicks, 750 points. First-team All-Tino winner Chandler Jones scored 731 points. Zadarius Smith, 590 points. Preston Smith, 547. Bud Dupree, 599. Marcus Golden, 538. Todd Davis, 484. And Kyle Vanoy, 442. For the cornerback group, they are led by Stephon Gilmore and Kevin King. Safeties will be led by recently acquired Jordan Poyer. Bucky, if you don't get it together. Devin McCourty and Marcus Williams return as well. This goes without saying, as it fits every team in this league, but for the Tigers to get to the ACC title picture and threaten for a national title, they will need to stay healthy. The potential is there as this team runs out a very talented roster. We head to Atlanta to check in with Chris Brigham, a.k.a. C. Bergeron's Yellow Jackets. It was a tale of 2 halves for this team. First half, the only thing colder than Dippin' Dots were the Yellow Jackets. They started off an ice-cold 0-3. At this point, he had a decision to make on how he was going to proceed for the rest of the year. He could throw in the towel and tank and shoot for a better pick, or he could grind through it and see what happens. He went with option B, and it was a wise choice. Starting in week 4, there weren't many teams, if any teams, hotter than this one. They won 5 straight and 6 of the last 8 games to close out the year. Unfortunately, they lost 2 of their last 3 to miss their shot at the ACC title game as well as the playoffs. However, they would end the regular season as the 20th ranked team in the country and found themselves in Pasadena for the Rose Bowl. C. Bergeron had his team ready to go, and they left Pasadena victorious with a 117-point win over Oregon State. They also left Rose Bowl champs. The Yellow Jackets would close out 2019 7-5 overall and 6-3 in the ACC. 4-2 versus the top 25, 2-0 versus the top 10, and 1-0 versus the top 5. They got this team as high as 12th in the country as late as week 9. Key members of the incoming class include Antonio Gibson, Tracy Walker, Ashton Davis, Jonathan Hankins, and wide receiver Antonio Gandy Golden. And due to this crazy COVID year, Devin Funchess and Eddie Goldman have chosen to opt out. Our crew caught up with C. Bergeron this offseason and asked the coach how he was feeling about his Georgia Tech team this year. The coach responded,
"Excited for our boys this season. Main focus this year will be to keep our boys healthy. Losing Big Ben week 1 and Darnold for 5 weeks. Gotta tell that stud, watch who he's kissing. Definitely gonna need our offense to carry us this year. Shortage of scholarships didn't allow us to address the holes we have on the defensive line. Got some good playmakers at the linebacker position and in the secondary. But like with any team, staying healthy is a must this year if we want to go all the way."
Looking at the roster, quarterback will be led by 691-point scorer Jared Goff. QB2 will likely be returning Ben Roethlisberger while hoping Sam Darnold takes a step forward. Running back is a strength for this team. He can start as many as 6 running backs if he wants to. Second-team All-Tino Dalvin Cook, second-team All-Tino Aaron Jones, Joe Mixon, Todd Gurley, Kareem Hunt, and one of Bucky's favorites this year, Antonio Gibson. Wide receivers led by Jerry Rice Trophy winner and first-team All-Tino Michael Thomas. Wide receivers 2 and 3 will likely be Kenny Golladay and Devontae Parker, or possibly Michael Gallup. Tight end is a gamble this year with Jared Cook and Jimmy Graham, sneaky little pick in Adam Troutman. Defensive tackle will not be a weakness for this group with first-team All-Tino winner Grady Jarrett and Matt Leonidas. Defensive end is ugly. There's no other way to put it. It's a hodgepodge of guys you're just hoping to get a tackle. However, keep an eye on Bradley Anae. Linebackers led by Lawrence Taylor Trophy winner and first-team All-Tino winner TJ Watt, Matt Milano, and Deion Jones will be every week starters as well. Corner is a bunch of contributors that quite a few scored between 380 and 480. This will be the week in and week out frustration as it's almost a guarantee the wrong corner will be started routinely. Safety is loaded with second-team All-Tino Landon Collins, Teron Matthew, Justin Simmons, and recently acquired Tracy Walker. Overall, for this team to take the next step, they're going to need somebody to take the QB2 spot and run with it. Or in this case, throw with it. Not everyone's Lamar Jackson, Bucky. Tight end and defensive end are going to be sore spots for this group, but everything else looks very solid. This team can, and I believe absolutely will, challenge for the ACC title and a playoff spot. We head south to Tallahassee to check out the storm brewing, and we aren't talking hurricanes. Damn it, Bucky, you are the worst. We're talking 2019 Ozzie Newsome winner Cam Bishop's Florida State Seminoles. For what was supposed to be a look ahead to 2020 year for this team, it was the total opposite. In spite of trading away pieces for picks and Devies, this team not only competed, they made the postseason. They finished 7-5 overall with a 6-3 mark in the ACC, 2-4 versus the top 25, 1-3 versus the top 10, and 0-2 versus the top 5. This group got their rank as high as 10th as late as week 11. They made their way into the postseason as the 15th ranked team in the country. Unfortunately, that meant a date with the second ranked and future national title runner-up Oregon Ducks. In most cases, you would be bummed to be knocked out in the first round, but this team should have never been there anyway. They were a year too early. Fast forward to now, and the pieces brought in are impressive. Running back Saquon Barkley, wide receiver Jerry Jeudy, wide receiver Mike Williams, running back Clyde Edwards-Helaire, defensive end Chase Young, running back Jonathan Taylor, defensive tackle Chris Jones, defensive tackle Jonathan Allen, linebacker Bradley Chubb, and quarterback Daniel Jones. And they've already received verbal commits from running backs Travis Etienne and Journey Brown. But to get something, you have to give something. So they did lose Carson Wentz as the main piece, but that was a small price to pay for what was gained. Also lost were quarterback Phillip Rivers, running back Raheem Mostert, and linebacker Whitney Merciless. Looking ahead to the roster, quarterback will come down to if Matthew Stafford can stay healthy. Daniel Jones looks like he can actually play. Bucky, as of now, was wrong about him. Ryan Tannehill will be the QB3 here. Running backs, we got Saquon Barkley and first-team All-Tino Austin Ekeler will do the heavy lifting. Clyde Edwards-Helaire and Jonathan Taylor will be early contributors in their freshman seasons. Kenyon Drake will be a major piece of the rotation as well. Newly acquired Darius Geis was kicked off campus for off-the-field issues. Wide receiver, we got first-team All-Tino Chris Godwin and Terry McLaurin. They'll lead this group. Jerry Jeudy, Bucky favorite Van Jefferson, Michael Pittman, and probably the most hyped player in this draft class, Brian Edwards. Tight end is absolutely loaded with second-team All-Tino George Kittle and Mark Andrews, and that's before and if you even need recently unretired Rob Gronkowski. Defensive tackle is disgusting. Second-team All-Tino DeForest Buckner, Jonathan Allen, and Chris Jones will handle their business up front. Javon Kinlaw will learn behind three of the best. Defensive end is top-heavy, led by Max Crosby, Frank Clark, and future Hall of Famer Chase Young, but after those three, it does fall off a little bit. Linebacker is led by Corey Littleton, Jerome Baker, Roquan Smith, Anthony Walker, and plenty of capable players filling in after those four. Cornerback is hoping to get Deion Sanders Trophy winner and first-team All-Tino Logan Ryan under contract for this season. Safety is stacked, and this group returns first-team All-Tino Budda Baker and Taylor Rapp, as well as Terrell Edmonds and Xavier Woods. Gabriel Davis, Michael Walker, and Kayvon Wallace are currently redshirting also. Overall, the Seminoles are incredibly talented. This team will be in the ACC title picture all year long, and I think is a strong bet to make the playoffs and make a run at the national title. The arrow can't point any more up on this team. I mentioned numerous times on last year's program that this team was becoming a problem, and I'm not sure everyone knows it. Well, they're loaded, hungry, and dangerous. I would not be excited about making a trip to Tallahassee this season. We make our way north to Blacksburg, Virginia, as we pay a visit to head coach David Llewellyn's Virginia Tech Hokies. This group is one of the better teams in the country from the start. They were 8-3 after Week 11 and found themselves in the ACC title game against NC State, who had beaten them earlier in the year. They would fall short once again, but would find themselves in the playoffs. They got in as the 13th seed and would upset the 4th-seeded Alabama Crimson Tide in the round of 16. In the Elite Eight, they ran into the 5th-seeded Wisconsin Badgers, and that would be the end of their 2019 season. Ultimately, a huge success to end the year as one of the top 8 teams. This group would end the year 9-5 overall and 7-3 in the ACC, a very respectable 5-3 versus the top 25, 2-2 versus the top 10, and 2-2 versus the top 5. They got as high as 8th in the country as late as Week 10. Looking forward to 2020, they bring in wide receiver Denzel Mims, tight end Devin Asiasi, wide receiver Russell Gage, defensive tackle Mike Purcell, and linebacker TJ Edwards. They've also received verbal commits from quarterback Trevor Lawrence and running back Breece Hall, and the only real loss, DeAndre Baker, who might be looking at time in prison. Quarterback, they're led by Aaron Rodgers and Tom Brady with Jimmy Garoppolo as the QB3. Running back, they have a very nice 1-2 punch of Nick Chubb and Josh Jacobs, but after that, it's nothing special. Wide receiver, they're big four. You can line up against anyone and feel pretty good about your chances. Second-team All-Tino Cooper Kupp, second-team All-Tino Keenan Allen, Devontae Adams, and Cortland Sutton. Tight end is led by first-team All-Tino Darren Waller and Hunter Henry. Defensive tackle is not a strong position, but there are some capable players here. Ndamukong Suh and Geno Atkins bring the veteran presence in the locker room. Newcomer Mike Purcell figures to play early. Defensive end is deep and honestly pretty scary. Second-team All-Tino Cameron Hayward, second-team All-Tino Cameron Jordan will lead the attack on opposing quarterbacks. Calais Campbell, Everson Griffin, and DeMarcus Lawrence round out the top guys in this group. Linebacker has a big 3. Second-team All-Tino Bobby Wagner, Zach Cunningham, and Tremaine Edmonds. It thins out pretty quick after that, though. Cornerback returns Trey Flowers and a pair of 400-point scorers in Mike Hilton and Byron Murphy. Safety is led by Harrison Smith and Malcolm Jenkins, as well as 496-point scorer Adrian Amos. The Hokies have a good chance to find themselves in the ACC title game this season. They will be in the mix all season long for a conference title and possible playoff berth. We make our final stop in the ACC and rally to check out Darryl Ward's 2019 ACC champion NC State Wolfpack. They opened the season with eventual national champion Oklahoma and would lose by over 300. After that, they dialed it in and would win 3 straight before dropping Week 5 to Georgia Tech. After that, they would run off 6 straight on their way to the ACC title game versus Virginia Tech, who they had beaten earlier in the season. Everything would remain the same, and the Wolfpack would go on to be crowned ACC champs and lock their spot in the playoffs. They would enter the playoffs as the number 3 seed, but would be an upset victim to number 14 Washington. Overall, the Wolfpack would end the year 10-3 overall and 9-1 in ACC play. A sparkling 6-1 record versus the top 25 and 2-0 versus the top 10. They spent a good chunk of their future acquiring some pieces, so this is not a very strong incoming class. Wide receiver Laviska Shenault, running back A.J. Dillon, safety Xavier McKinney, tight end Cole Kmet, and wide receiver Devin Duvernay. The good news is the only loss of any magnitude is Eli Manning, who has retired. Looking at the roster, quarterback is a trio of Baker Mayfield, Kirk Cousins, and Derek Carr. Running back is Le'Veon Bell and Leonard Fournette, and then it falls off a cliff. Wide receiver is led by Mike Evans, Jarvis Landry, T.Y. Hilton, and look for DK Metcalf to take a huge step forward this season. Tight end is going to be led by Greg Olsen, who likely has 1 year left. Incoming freshman Cole Kmet will be looking for snaps this season. Defensive tackle is led by Aaron Donald and Javon Hargrave. Defensive end is led by Daniil Hunter and Yannick Ngakoue, and then it thins out. Linebacker is the strength of the defense and their deepest position overall. Darius Leonard is the heart and soul. Fred Warner, Jamie Collins, Devondre Campbell were all 600-point scorers. Robert Quinn was a 500-point guy. Cornerback is the weakness here. Top to bottom, everyone was under 300 points. Safety is led by Jamal Adams. 500-point scorer Sean Williams returns. This team is led by its defense first and foremost. Playmakers in the front 7 that make this thing work. The offense is below average. Wide receiver is strong after trading for Mike Evans and T.Y. Hilton last season. Running back and tight end are way below average. Quarterback is steady but not spectacular. I doubted this team last year, and they proved me wrong. I will go back to the well, as I think this team is closer to a middle-of-the-road ACC team than a conference champion and perennial playoff team. If things fall their way again, this team could make some noise, but I would bet against it. And that brings us to the 2020 predictions from Tussin and Bucky. Tussin likes Florida State to win the ACC, beating Clemson. Finishing third, he's got Virginia Tech, 4th Georgia Tech, 5th Notre Dame, 6th Syracuse, 7 NC State, 8 Miami, 9 North Carolina, and 10 Wake Forest. The dark horse in this conference, Notre Dame, coming up a little bit from the bottom, closer to the middle of the pack here. And falling off, he's got NC State, from last year's ACC champs down to 7. And Bucky Shank's 2020 ACC predictions go as follows. I've got Florida State winning this conference over Clemson. I tried to warn you guys that Florida State was building a monster, and this is the beginning of what I feel is going to be a long run at the top for the Seminoles. Third, I've got Georgia Tech. I love what Steve Bergeron is building. This would have been my dark horse, but going from 4th to 3rd in the conference, that's hardly a dark horse. I wouldn't be shocked at all if this team lead Clemson for the 2nd spot or found themselves in the playoffs. 4th, I've got Notre Dame. After looking at the roster and putting it up against the rest of the ACC, this is the 4th best team in my opinion. 5th, we've got Virginia Tech. 6th, I've got NC State. I said last year I thought this team was going to be near the bottom, and they surprised everyone except for Wisconsin head coach Matt Brostowitz. I think this team takes a big step back this season. 7th, I've got Miami. 8th, I've got Syracuse. 9th, I've got North Carolina. And 10th, I've got Wake Forest. My dark horse is Notre Dame, as said previously. Notre Dame I've got as the 4th best team in this conference. And falling off, I've got NC State, last year's ACC champs. I think they take a big step back this year. And that'll do it for our 2020 ACC preview. Next up, we've got the Big Ten. For everybody here at Tino Studios in Buckingham Palace, I'm your host, Bucky Shanks. Good night, everybody.